because don't really often get to do this live in the studio. So I mean, we'll see how this goes here. But
yeah, really paying dividends for me stalking you until I found out where you lived.
That is how we met.
Yeah,
that is. It's kind of romantic.
It's the cutest story.
Almost like Sea Smoke and Adam of Hull. Wow, wow, wow. I can't hear the music, by the way. We're just talking. Let's go ahead and bring it back to the camera. Hello. Hey, what's up? It's the Aemond. See, I told you he's here. Live and in studio. Okay, I'm already done with that.
A lot.
But we are here to talk about Aemond One-Eye. And I'm here with my friend Sean MacArthur in the studio. Sean, thanks for coming over to Lightbringer Studios.
Psyched to be here. I've been murdering small animals in my free time just to get in character as Aemond.
Yeah, spoiler alert. The great squirrel culling of Harrenhal, as I just put my overlay here on, and there we go. We've got nothing for the bottom gap. It's just my desktop. Well, let me see if I can pull up that nasty picture of Aemond's sapphire eye, and I'll put that down there. Hello, chat. We do have the chat. We will be answering. The autos have
asking about the shirt. It's a bunch of things that George says too much, like nuncle, it is known, words are wind. Yeah.
And tell me, how is the audio? Sounds like the wrong audio source. Doesn't sound like that mic. It is. Oh, maybe it's overdriving? Is it overdriven? Is it distorted? Hard time hearing them. Okay, fun. Let's see, is it on the right setting? Maybe this one? It seems like we're coming through. It's a bit low. Maybe we can turn it up over here. How's this? Are we coming through yet? It's in the yellow.
A little better? Oh, they say it's good now. Great.
Okay. Much better. There we go. Oh, okay. I just must have had the cardioid semi-diaphragm. We're doing stuff a little different than normal, so thanks for bearing with us. And let me just pull up some artwork to fill this very ugly hole. But Sean, while I'm doing that, Aemond One-Eye, pretty much the villain of the show so far. So what's your take on Aemond?
Well, insofar that, anybody can claim full credit that way, my take is he's kind of an echo of Daemon, but he's not tempered by kind of his brother Viserys, as in Daemon. He's not got a brother there to kind of temper his worst qualities.
Well, he had a brother there.
Yeah, but that guy is not tempering anything.
Well, he tempered. He was tempered. He was forged and tempered.
Yeah. And now Aemond has a temper.
And now he has a temper. There you go. That's cool. So it says it's picking up really well, so we don't even have to try to project to. Okay, cool. That's perfect. So basically, the reason why I wanted to do this stream is because I kind of wanted to do a video about this, but I didn't have time.
Sure. And
also, when I thought about it, it seemed like there was some stuff that would be good for the discussion format to sort of tease out. And you being somewhat villainous in nature, I figured you were the right person for this. So that's how this happened. And basically, I think the first thing that I think people are getting wrong, Sean, is that he's got this temper that's really out of control, and that he's like a psychopath and stuff. And we like we say, sociopath and psychopath are somewhat outdated words, but people use them in a general sense to mean like this is unbalanced, or sometimes they're trying to talk about the lack of empathy. Mm-hmm. Now, I do think characters like Larys and Aemond rather, they are warring on their own empathy in the style of Kylo Ren, right? Like I've compared before, like killing your attachments in order to be a bad MFer. But with Aemond, I think he is calculating.
Yes.
And so he does have a temper, but it's something that he essentially keeps like an attack dog on a leash. And by letting people know that he's capable of great violence, but not really seeming unbalanced, this is a very threatening thing. Compared to Aegon, for example. Aegon has a temper too, but he doesn't.
In the moment.
Right. He's just always flailing and he's out of control. He's not in control of it, so it's not intimidating. He just seems like he doesn't have control of himself.
Right. Well, and you see it in in so many scenes, it's something that's harder to really impart through Fire and Blood. But when you see it on the show, you see things like Aegon showing up at the brothel and making fun of Aemond, and then he handles it exactly how he would. He kind of throws the madam there under the bus, but he keeps his composure. He doesn't, do anything. But then, later he kind of, revenge is maybe the wrong word, but it's certainly in that ballpark.
Yeah, and so I've compared the whole thing that he does where people are doing stuff that offends him, and he doesn't react in the moment. With the brothel scene is a great example. But you can see him writing it down somewhere inside on a scorecard that he's keeping for everyone.
With Steve Buscemi's lipstick. Billy Madison.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was like, Steve Buscemi. I think I know who that is. But the point is, he's making a list. He's checking it many times. We might even imagine him with an Arya list. Right?
Yeah, well, I thought you were going with Santa, but Arya's probably better.
Yeah. So these offenses, he's writing them down. Obviously, the winged pig. What do they call the pink dread? The pink dread.
Right.
Cleo's other nickname.
Yeah.
And I will get into the chat in just a second, guys. I've got it on my phone. I've got it on the screen. But so Aemond, he's been writing down all these things. You could almost be reminded of like a Columbine shooter.
Oh yeah,
almost somebody who's just they all made fun of me. I'm going to make them pay. They took my stapler. That kind of thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw the stapler guy under the bus. He would never blow up a building. Oh, that's right. He did blow up the building.
Burn it down to the ground.
I burned it down to the ground. So, essentially what I'm saying is that he is not quite as unbalanced as some people think. And I think in the small council meeting is the scene I really want to drill into.
Yeah.
Because he is... And by the way, we're going to do symbolism as well. The schedule for today is character analysis with no spoilers. And then we just started, Stacy. And then we're going to get into a little symbolism. So for you guys that are new to the channel, and welcome all of you who have been subscribing lately, we'll give you a little preview of some classic Ice and Fire symbolism. Aemond, as you can see, reminiscent of a White Walker with a blue star sapphire in his eye. That is not an accident. In A Song of Ice and Fire, people don't have blue star sapphires in their eyes for no good reason.
No, it's not very subtle. And then you have other... sapphire is just... and especially when they call it star sapphire. But yeah, it's obviously pointing in that direction. You get a lot of the same vibes from Brienne being from the Sapphire Isle.
Yeah, Brienne and Aemond definitely have similar vibes.
Yeah.
No.
They're...
Similar symbolism, yes. But different vibes. Which is one of the things about the symbolic archetypes. Like Jon has Night King symbolism. Aemond has Night King symbolism. Euron has Night King symbolism. Stannis, Waymar. Mm-hmm. All of these people are parallels to the Night's King in some way, but they're telling us different things about it. And just like Azor Ahai, Night's King legend, this is just a preview of what we're going to get into, is more complex than at first presented. Anybody the legends tell you, oh, this is purely a bad guy. He did lots of awful things.
Great.
Right.
Scale.
There might be some more complex truth. And the same thing with Azor Ahai. I'm always going on about how he's a bad guy and how, he killed his wife and broke the moon and these things are bad. But so there's always a silver lining. And what George does by giving us characters as opposite as Euron on one hand and Aemond, villainous characters. And then you have characters like Jon Snow and Brienne who are heroic. But they're both giving us a view on a similar archetype. So in some cases, it's a father-son kind of a relationship that share the same symbolism. But point is, we'll get into all that in the second half of the stream.
Brother. Yeah.
Psychopath and his... And if you notice, Aegon, King Aegon, he's riding a dragon named Sunfire. And he's the king. He wears the crown, which is classically gold. I don't know what... His crown is obviously black because the Targaryens are dark solar kings. The point is, Aemond took the sun out of the sky. And that's a very Night King thing to do, right? The sun, fire, dragon, literally crashed out of the sky onto the ground like a meteor.
Into the woods, or the werewood net.
Into the woods. And so, yeah, there's a lot of symbolism going on that we can talk about. But first, we shall do the character thing. So the small council meeting.
Yes.
It starts off with him showing his temper. They dare defy me, or something like that, right?
It's demonstrative.
Yes.
More than it's actually reactive.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
So he's kind of setting a precedent for the meeting, if anything. Like, or not even a precedent. He's letting the other people in the small council know that he has a temper. And so immediately that changes the tone of the small council meeting. And he doesn't lose his temper on anything after that. Everything is very organized. He doesn't even let other people bring things up. It's all about what he wants to get done and addressed. And he goes through it systematically. It's all, like, as you said earlier, cold and calculating.
Yeah, and I noticed in the meeting he's picked up some things from Otto. Okay, yeah. There's some similar things. So, for example, Otto is very quick to ride over people. What Otto will do is he'll bring up an idea, and somebody will be like, "Oh, we can't do that," and he'll be like, "Aha!" But argument. And if the other person doesn't immediately come back with a strong rebuttal, he'll then just be like, he'll turn to somebody else and make the order and have him carry it out. Like we saw that with Alicent in the Green Council. He was all like trying to send men to Dragonstone to kill Rhaenyra, and Alicent had to be like, wait, belie that order, because Otto has already just rode over her concerns and he's giving the order. And so Aemond is doing a similar thing in the meeting where he is riding over people, but I want to point out that he's not doing it with a loud voice or an aggressive thing. He speaks slowly and calmly, almost like a parent telling their child what reality is, because the slow, patient voice is the asserting reality voice. And so he's doing that the whole meeting. He's riding over people, but then speaking calmly and slowly, or at least in a like measured fashion, not super slowly, but he's not yelling at people.
Well, it definitely sets a contrast. There's one of the best goddamn quotes in the series was, any man who has to say he is king is no king. So when you have Aegon, getting all fired up and angry and yelling at people to do something, blah, 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 but it's, undirected and he has no idea what's going on. And he thinks that, screaming at people and showing that he's mad is the source of authority. Whereas Aemond recognizes that he's already in the position of authority. The fact that he is king means they have to listen. So he will speak quietly to force them to, prick up their ears.
So it's interesting that you mentioned Tywin, because obviously Otto and Tywin are very similar characters. Right. And Tywin also has a very distinct style of running a meeting. We saw that in Game of Thrones when Tyrion is in the tent, they're on the Red Fork after the battle or whatever, or maybe it's before the battle, I forget. Point is, Tyrion points out that Tywin does a thing where he waits for everyone to talk. And he waits. And then he comes down with an authoritative thing at the end of it. Instead of like putting his opinion out there first. And Aemond has been doing that all season in these small council meetings. Like when they were choosing between him and Alicent, he didn't say a word in favor of himself. Right. He let people talk, he let Alicent talk, and then he took power. And he's doing that in this meeting as well, in the sense that he's very meticulous and calculated about the way he's running it. He's running over people, so it's not less of the waiting to talk this time. But it's just various little attributes that he's picked up from Otto or that remind us of Tywin. And then the other thing that he's doing in the meeting that we've not seen before is he's standing and pacing, but in this menacing serial killer.
Super creepy.
Yeah.
Super creepy.
So talk about that.
Well, yeah. I think it got the creepiest when he walked around to Tywin Lannister's chair and just like, not quite touching him, but like leaving his hands over the... Yeah.
That was almost as disturbing as the Aegon scene to me. Like, that was very disturbing the way he did that.
Yes. Well, at least with Aegon, like, the threat is not really implicit. Like, he's, pushing the small council orb.
You're right. That's what it is. It's like, are we having a meeting? Or is some psychosexual, like, murder foreplay happening here? Like, he's leaning in and, like, it's...
Well, foreplay is important.
You got to hawk to on it before you before you kill him, I guess. Let me move this so I don't... There we go. I was getting some creaking. All right. Nope, still getting creaking. All right, we'll just deal with it. So...
Anything to talk about birds.
And so I think there's a lot of power dynamics going on. And so this is kind of what I want to talk about as far as Aemond is not a psycho in that like he's some sort of loose cannon. He is comparable to a young Tywin. I think that's actually a really good comparison. A young Tywin was like 16 when he did Reigns of Castamere, by the way. Something like that, very young. And so he is a product of the Game of Thrones. Just like someone like Cersei or Tywin. There's like the Game of Thrones rewards people that are ruthless to an extent. Now there's also cost. There's the rat catcher factor. If you commit atrocities, you lose the people, you risk the people's revolt and stuff like that. We talked about this with Maegor, ruling through fear versus having a balance, okay? Right. But in a Game of Thrones feudal barbarian, these kings are basically barbarian warlords, especially the Dragon Kings.
Yeah.
Okay. And so might makes right is a certain philosophy that a lot of people will have playing in this game. And that is what Aemond is doing. So, for example, when he sends his mother away, okay, he's basically he's completely ignoring her in the meeting and then holding her after to kick her out of the meetings. And then there's this moment where she's trying to cut through that. She's trying to put his hand on his cheek and mother him. And he takes it away. And he's like, no. And so he's both removing her from the small council and removing her permission to mother him. And he's doing this because he's got to make himself hard. I was trying to give the chat something to talk about, Sean. You're the casualty.
Yeah, and
but, he shaved about, what, this morning? It's a little
yeah, I got a little bit of, it comes out like Play-Doh spaghetti. Like if I really let it go, I would look like a, barbarian.
Well, no, you're going to cut your hair and donate it to charity, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to do Locks for Love with it. And honestly, I can't wait to get rid of it. It's so much maintenance. I'm so sick of it. And I've never had long hair in my life before, and this is really just the product of my midlife crisis, which I've solved by having a YouTube channel, so I don't need the hair anymore.
That's right. Hero with 1,000 Voices, by the way, is Sean's YouTube channel, and it is linked in the description. So check that out. You've already got one video up, which I've watched.
Yeah, and my Patreon is open now, and I have a video up on there about King Arthur in A Song of Ice and Fire. I even had a little a sliding grayscale of Rhaegar of Lancelot I talked about a little bit. All the people who are representing Lancelot.
50 Shades of Rhaegar?
Well, and like, how they're like more or less black and white figures. Okay. So like you have the closer to white Rhaegar is like a Lancelot who's closer to white. Then you have like Jaime and Littlefinger who go closer to black. But it's like, it's the same thing we were talking about with like, you have multiple representations of an archetype. Right. Some are good, some are bad, some are kind of in the middle. Right.
And this is, right, so like gray characters, the archetypes themselves are gray. For example, like with Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa, okay? You can read it either way. With Azor Ahai, he's, the legend, in case you're a show watcher and you haven't, who's Azor Ahai? He stabbed his wife to forge Lightbringer. But he did it in this way where he's like, he called Nissa Nissa, and great was his sorrow, and he asked her to bear her breast, and she basically understood that she's sacrificing herself. She does it willingly, and he tempers the magic sword in her heart, and her lifeblood goes into the steel, and that makes it this magic sword, Lightbringer, which helps him end the long night. Now, fine print, when she is stabbed with the sword, she cries out, and her cry of agony and ecstasy, which is a weird sort of double term.
That is not how getting stabbed with the sword works.
No, it's all agony. It cracks the moon. It leaves a crack across the face of the moon, and then it goes out. It goes out when that happens. There we go. We'll
I was wondering if the moon ran out of battery.
No, it did not. It did not. I turned it off.
That's no moon.
And so, well, yes, it's a pile of dragons all squished together.
It's a space station.
The dragons are on the space station.
Yeah.
Somebody draw that. And so, okay. So Azor, the legend says Azor Ahai is a hero because he sacrificed the thing he loved the most in the world, which was Nissa Nissa, who's also a person, not a thing, by the way. But he ends the long night and he sacrifices his love. Okay. It's kind of like a justification for blood magic. So I read it the other way. I was like, well, he murders his wife in a blood magic ritual, and he broke the moon. And by the way, if you broke a moon, you'd get pieces of the moon falling to Earth, and those moon meteors could potentially throw up enough dust, ash, and debris in the atmosphere to cloud the skies and cause the long night. And this is my first theory, moon meteor theory. So embedded in moon meteor theory is the idea that Azor Ahai killing Nissa Nissa was actually a bad thing that caused the long night because it broke the moon. And this fits with George's seeming commentary on blood magic, which is it's never justified and it's always bad. Like with Davos, saying it's not justified to sacrifice Edric Storm to save the kingdom. What's the life of one boy versus a kingdom? And Davos says everything. And,
Great quote.
Right. And what's the point of saying everything? What's the point of that?
Well, I think, for one, it's to differentiate Davos and Stannis as different members of similar archetypes, where they're at different ends of the kind of gray spectrum, where Davos is pretty close to white, despite the fact that, historically he's been a smuggler and, done some things he's maybe not proud of. But Stannis is getting into some pretty dark stuff, like having blood magic murder his brother and Courtney Penrose.
So what's being lost if sacrificing a child to make or Nissa Nissa through an act of blood magic can create a dragon or a weapon that we need? What is lost when we choose to do that?
Humanity.
Yes. Principles are humanity. The things that make us human. The line between what we'll do and what we won't do. And that is exactly the point. So when you read it that way, Azor Ahai becomes a bad guy. But then when you think about Nissa Nissa's end of things, let's spin it around. And let's look at it from Nissa Nissa's point of view. There's a need for someone to sacrifice themselves to make a magic blade to save the world. Or we could just say, there's a need for a hero to step up and risk their lives and lay it down on the life on the line, to save other people, which is like the most heroic thing you can do. And so Nissa Nissa represents a character or an archetype of someone who is willing to do that, who bears her breast, who sacrifices their lifeblood, their energy, their whatever there is, for other people. And we see both Daenerys and Jon doing that, laying themselves on the line, paying the ultimate price in Jon's case, getting murdered in partially for bad management, but in mostly because he let the wildlings through the wall, because he saw common humanity with the wildlings, and he said, no, they belong on the south side of the wall, not with the monsters and the ghouls, but on the side of the living. And he essentially paid the price for that. Daenerys, same thing. She's risking her dragon and her life to free the Unsullied instead of just buying the ones she can. And so Nissa Nissa is setting that precedent of laying herself on the line, right? And so this is kind of what I'm talking about with archetypes, is like George likes, they're gray in the sense that George can take these myths and spin out different sorts of characters from them. And that is, by the way, how a lot of classic mythology works.
Yeah.
Like the Garden of Eden myth is one. We don't have to get into it, but I made a whole video about the different ways and lessons you can read from that, and there's like 6. So
Hashtag Eve did nothing wrong.
That's right. Eve did nothing wrong.
But I'm in talking about them, it's not even just like the characters, but even the scenarios play out different levels of gray. So like you're talking about Nissa Nissa being a hero for sacrificing herself. And I guess one of the things that really comes up with me is there's a back and forth between two sort of Nissa Nissa characters with Catelyn and Brienne. And they talk about how giving birth is a different sort of battle. And especially in those days, and especially if you don't have a dedicated maester, or maybe you're doing, interspecies between human and children of the forest.
I mean, sometimes, as one does.
No judgment here, but, the idea is that's extremely risky when you're deciding to give birth in non-modern times or in some parts of America, then you are putting your life on the line.
And there is still always, of course, a certain level of risk.
Yeah.
As everyone knows, even just trying to conceive.
So it can be an act of self-sacrifice, and that's why George keeps killing all these women in childbirth. Won't you think of the women?
And, well, I also think that, every parent sacrifices a large portion of their life just to raise kids. In fact, you and I, both guys who don't have kids, and have brothers and sisters who do have kids, we were just talking about this. Like, you make these different choices. We get some sort of vicarious joy out of seeing our family members who have created families. But like, for myself, I chose to dedicate my life to art. Like, I made that a conscious choice at a certain point. I was sitting on the fence forever. And then I was like, I actually want to spend all my time making art. If you have children, you could still do stuff, but it takes a lot of time and energy to raise a damn child. And so
you're tired all the time.
So you're tired, exactly. I'm tired all the time.
You don't sleep enough. You're always doing stuff. Yeah, like I love my nieces a lot. I spoil them. I play with them. I'm glad it's on like a 5 to 10% basis.
Very safe. You can leave when you want. But the point is, like, George is sort of dramatizing the sacrifice that parents made by showing you parents that literally get killed for their children. But all parents are sacrificed. So we've gotten pretty far away from Aemond. Let's reel it back in there. Archetypes are fun, though. Nissa is fun. And so with...
Only is an important representation of that archetype. Maybe like one of the most important. Certainly the most important in the Dance of the Dragons, I would say.
Well, I got a segue for you.
Okay.
The Night's King of Ice and Fire... let's get on our segues. Let's get on. Was a man that knew no fear. And Aemond One-Eye is embracing the sort of governance by fear and also the suppression of fear with a sort of power dominance.
And so is Daemon.
They're
Daemon. Really playing two sides of a coin there.
That is the thing they have in common. So you have thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that. And obviously, the show is trying to do something similar when they had Daemon chasing around Daemon with an eye patch. That's really not a subtle way to create kind of an equivalence between the two characters. But it really is like, they both have a lot of parental issues. Daemon and Viserys basically grew up without parents for most of their lives. Certainly without a mom for almost all of it. And then, obviously Alicent she has done everything she can to avoid doing any actual mothering. And Viserys was somewhat of an absent parent even before his health issues. So,
and anytime we bag on Alicent's parenting, I do feel like we got to add the disclaimer. She was used as a political tool from the time she was a teenager. And
like
so,
Tywin and Cersei. And
so very much, the auto Alicent's kid stuff is so like the Lannister family. It's not even funny. It's very similar psychology. But to your point, as far as Aemond and his commonality with Daemon, they are both embracing that might makes right philosophy. And we see that with Jaime too, kind of like, no, there's no man like me. If I want to push the kid out of the window, I can. If I decide to kill the king, I can. Which we agree with killing the king, not with pushing the kid out the window. But there's a sort of amoral superior... If Jaime had a dragon, he would be Daemon, I would say.
I could see it. And what's interesting is that Daemon is really being forced through these trippy acid dreams that we've seen entirely too much of, to face a lot of the things that he's done and maybe even just like kind of look at consequences to a point.
That's exactly right. So Daemon...
That's what Jaime's entire arc is about.
Right. Yes. And so I compared this philosophy to the Silicon Valley move fast and break things people, if you will. It's like there are no rules. We're just going to do it and damn the consequences. Move fast, break things, then keep moving fast before anybody with the broken things can catch up to you and complain about the broken things.
It's the Jeff Goldblum line. It's your scientists never stop to think if they should.
That sounded like you have a Jeff Goldblum voice that you edged into. Could you just would you like to?
I haven't practiced it, but
okay.
I could give it a shot. Were you planning on having any dinosaurs on this dinosaur tour?
I did do a dino DNA in my last video.
Oh, good.
What was I talking about? Aemond and fear and jog my memory. What were we just talking about?
So we're talking about Aemond as insofar as he had some similarities to Daemon.
Oh yes. So they are both okay, and we were talking about consequences specifically. So Daemon is finally slowing down enough in his Harrenhal sort of fear and loathing in Harrenhal dream state that he is now being forced to confront the consequences of all the stuff that he's done. Now, Aemond is on the very beginning of that arc, so he's a long way from thinking about that. He is only moving fast. But I think the way that this started is very interesting. It was kind of accidental in the sense that it started with Luke. He didn't necessarily plan to kill Luke. He didn't know Luke was going to be there, but he showed up. And so Aemond, this is the one time when we really did see his temper getting the better of him. He went too far. I mean, like, what is he? When put out your eye, strong. Like, he's not going to put out his eye. He's literally just trying to provoke a fist fight right there.
He was enjoying making him afraid.
Yeah. Yes. That's a great way to put it. And so this all leads to the killing of Luke and RX, Dragon and Dragon Rider, first casualty of the war. And so Aemond comes home, and this is something I felt like they could have spent more time on, but we saw a little bit of it. Everyone's now afraid of him.
Which, I mean, they should be, even if he doesn't have Vhagar.
But he does have Vhagar. So,
Vhagar.
So it's a complementary thing with the personality and the dragon. But that's the thing, is like the idea of Aemond having this temper and this capacity for violence that's on a leash is a perfect mirror for the idea of having this huge dragon on a leash. He can take it out when he needs to and destroy an entire castle or town or somebody else's dragon or anything. And so he kills Luke and he comes home and people are now a little bit afraid of him. And so he tastes that. He's like, okay, this is power. And so he walks into the meeting in the early episodes and he is pointing at the board and he's trying to assert himself. And we're not sure. Everyone's looking around like, he doesn't really have a chair at this meeting, but he does have the biggest dragon. And you could just see the uncertainty of everyone else at the small council when he's in those first meetings.
Well, that was another scene where he was very quiet until everybody else had worked it out.
That is exactly.
And then they say, "Oh, I guess he can stay."
So he does, and that's the Vhagar. I feel like is the elephant in the room.
Yeah,
because if he didn't have Vhagar, and he was just walking in trying to do that, it'd be a lot easier to rebuke him. So the idea that he has Vhagar and is willing to use Vhagar is, yes, there's definitely some shades of Magor there. Absolutely, Rissa. And so then we have this moment at Rook's Rest. By the way, Rook's Rest video, rest in peace. Banned from YouTube. I am going to try to re-upload it. But he has this moment where he was not, obviously, he didn't set this up to kill Aegon. It was Aegon came and spoiled his planning. But it was this last straw moment for him where he's like, this is the last I've had of you. And I'm looking up at Aegon in the sky here. And it's just like, this is the last straw. I think you made the point that he probably would have been willing to let Aegon be the king and just sort of run things until he interfered, right?
Yeah, well, and I don't think that I don't think there was actual malice in what he did to Aegon, despite the result. I think he basically gave up Aegon as dead.
That's probably a good way to put it.
Aegon's dragon is getting torn up by Meleys, who is much bigger and stronger with more experience and a more experienced rider. And you don't survive falls from a height on a dragon. You just don't.
Yeah. So
I mean, he was able to kind of sort of survive with Sunfire flapping half a wing, but not very well. And his problem is not just the burns. Like he'll never be able to walk on his leg again. He has a huge amount of medical problems just from the fall. So if you're Aemond looking at that, you're like, well, he's done, and I gotta win this war. There's one of the biggest threats right there.
Yeah, and so and that's kind of my point as far as his character. Like, when he saw Aegon flying into the battle, he's just like, if you were going to stay out of my way, maybe I would have let you remain king.
Yeah.
But he is just been watching his brother make mistake after mistake, you get the feeling that Aemond really did not like the demoting Otto, and did not like the appointing his cronies, his drinking buddies, to the Kingsguard.
Right.
Like that was one of the first things he chewed him out in High Valyrian in that one meeting. Episode 3 or 4.
Which is, I mean, again, all of the things that he, got into Aegon about was done in the same order that Otto did it.
How do you mean?
So, when Otto is so it's actually reverse order, sorry. But, Otto first comes in and it's about the rat catchers, right? And then, what did you do? You sent somebody to Dragonstone to go kill, blah, blah. And then it's, like you've appointed these lick spittles and idiots to your Kingsguard and blah, blah. And so, like, Aemond ends up, touching on all the same things.
I see. Yeah, totally. And then he recalls Otto. Yeah. And so, I predict that Aemond and Otto are going to get along pretty well. And that Otto's going to be
You think Otto's going to make it back to King's Landing?
Yeah, I think so.
It's hard to say. The way I look at it, like, it's interesting that they made such a big thing about Alicent not being able to contact Otto.
Yeah, and I guess we don't know. We're a little bit off of the Fire and Blood rails with Otto here. Mm-hmm. I do think he needs to come back to King's Landing, but when he comes back, I'm not sure. I tend to think so. I think Otto was the most interesting in King's Landing. With all those
I
characters.
want Otto back.
So he's want
such
Otto.
A good actor, and they kind of need an adult in the room, but.
But the point is, if whenever he does get back, I think he will. Basically, because Otto is extremely ruthless, and if I'm right about my view of Aemond, where I'm saying he's not as emotionally based and he's more calculated, then that would make him more similar to Otto, just flat out.
Yeah, well, and he's also worked to get there, I think. Because when you saw him when he was a kid, he was a little bit more reactive.
Well, he's been bleeding out some of that rage with, his therapy sessions, his poppy sessions.
That is what Alicent asked, when she caressed his face.
And some people have pointed out that this is actually, like, nice because it's a positive portrayal of therapy using opiates, which is a real thing. I saw that activism angle online. That's not really neither here nor there, but yeah, he's, letting that anger bleed out a little bit. Now, of course, let's talk about the madam's name. What's her name? Aemond's...
Oh, God, I don't remember her, but it was interesting to see her in a very different role in having a conversation that was clearly for Ulf the Sot's benefit.
Yes. And the chat will give me her name in just a second, of course.
Sylvie,
thank you. Yeah, so we touched on this in the live stream post-game. And the big question is, were Sylvie and her girls really called to the Red Keep for some event where there was largesse and excess, or is this completely made up as a tale that's being spun?
You're not necessarily buying it.
What's that?
I said you're not necessarily buying it.
No, I was thinking that it did happen,
Okay.
And people in the chat were assuming that it was completely a story. But I'm guessing it wasn't, because that would have been part of what turned Sylvie against Aemond. Like, there was the one scene where obviously Aegon comes in and then Aemond's like, oh yeah, she's nothing to me, whatever. But I think it would make sense if she did go to the Red Keep. Because Sylvie doesn't care about Aemond. But what she was trying to do was be a good influence on him because he's a powerful person.
Yeah, she was advocating for the small folk,
right,
in almost every conversation.
So I think that she would be more offended by going to the Red Keep and seeing this sort of excess than by like a slight to her honor in that moment.
She's a madam / prostitute. She has had other insults to her. Like she's not worried about that. I agree.
I tend to think there was something at the Red Keep, and that she did see that they have plenty of food.
Yeah, well, and see, lonk the lunk there. The best lies are based in truth.
Yeah. So I'm waiting to see how much of what Sylvie is doing is like, is she paid by Mysaria? Is she, or is there genuine? Because she seemed kind of She was doing a good acting job if she was being paid, The
Yeah, no,
actor
she was projecting. She was doing all the,
seemed emotional.
Well, and she interacted directly with that barmaid, who was also in the previous episode, where one of Ulf the Sot's friends smacked her butt. She's also, I believe, in chat, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe she was...
That's Aegon's SA victim. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So...
And so they are weaving all this together in an interesting way. And real quick,
all the squishers.
welcome to Squishers, and thank you to you, Gare, for gifting the memberships. Hey there, Summertime. And hey there, Cody Myers. So yeah, if you guys have questions for us, you can send them in that way. And I may have gotten a PayPal too. Let me see. Oh, just crab emojis. That is acceptable. If you're PayPaling, you can send a question or crab emojis. Nimble Dick sends his regards.
Nimble Dick.
Okay.
Nimble Dick versus Crab Feeder 1v1.
Oh.
Yeah, they have some overlapping symbolism.
It wouldn't be Nimble Dick. It'd be Sir Clarence Crab with Nimble Dick in the corner like Flavor Flav.
That's no 1v1. Sir Clarence Crab, I mean, he took out Galadon of Morn.
He would wipe his arse with the crab feeder.
Yeah.
We'd get crab feeder and like two of his henchmen.
Tied a dragon in a knot or something.
Yes.
Like, just the amount of core strength you would need for that kind of...
So with Aemond, one of the last things I wanted to get to... Actually, let me pull up. Where's my phone? I have my Aemond's notes on my phone. Because I think there was one or two things that I want to hit. Oh, this is what I get for not naming my documents. Untitled document. Untitled document. That's the wrong episode here.
Now, this is a good opportunity for a Magic Spoon endorsement here.
We will eventually have this sort of thing online. Oh yeah, I wanted to compare Aemond to Larys. Okay, so Larys is also ruthless and cold. I mean, he killed his family. So obvious parallel. Aemond, and before we even get to the Larys comparison, one thing that I've mentioned a few times now, so I don't need to belabor the point, but like in real history with royal families like this, it is very common for siblings to view each other as rivals since childhood and plan on trying to kill each other or usurp each other for the throne. Like this happens since there's kings in the historical record. Like you go back to the first records of Assyrian kings and stuff, you will find brothers killing brothers or somebody dying mysteriously and his younger brother takes the throne. This is common stuff. So what you shouldn't think about like, oh, well, I couldn't kill my brother or sister. No, you guys are decent people. You're David Lightbringer viewers and Hero with 1,000 Voices viewers. You're decent people. But this is like, Aemond and Aegon don't have that kind of relationship. They are both players of the Game of Thrones who happen to be born into the same family. And Aemond has been disapproving of everything Aegon has been doing this whole time. And so there's a little bit of that. I think most of it is a matter of like, you're not doing a good job, and I'm not going to let our side lose because of your incompetence. And so now this is the last straw, you meddling in my battle plans, and I'm just going to take you out, and I'm going to take care of this now.
Well, which he had no business involving himself in. Because, I mean, him not speaking Valyrian is a pretty good indicator of how unserious he was with learning these kinds of things. And military strategy and all of that are things that you're absolutely teaching all these, medieval lords and princes. And there's no way that he would have learned it, but you know that Aemond would have been very into it. And obviously he is, because he was very comfortable talking all those things, whereas, Aegon's just yelling stuff.
So before we get to the Larys comparison, let's actually talk about Aegon and Aemond. Do you think, was Aegon to some extent a little bit suicidal? Like, was he kind of willing to throw his life away? Like, I'm just tired of being overlooked. I'm going to go throw my dragon at the other dragon and maybe I'll die. Maybe I won't, but at least I won't be ignored. mean, he's drinking heavily. Like, what's the mindset there?
I think that he's short-sighted in the way that a lot of 20 to 22-year-olds are very short-sighted. You don't really think through the consequences of your actions. You react quickly, instinctively, often emotionally, before you kind of get that under control as you mature. I think in general, that's already a problem for him. Even the mature version of him has issues with all of those things. And he didn't even get there. So I look at that dynamic as basically a failed Viserys and Daemon. And it goes back to something that you said in one of the other streams, where ideally Viserys and Daemon work together and kind of temper each other. And, Aemond could have been a very good Daemon figure to Aegon, but there's no redeeming, qualities that would make, Otto Hightower cry the, lone Cherokee tear there, where he's full of veterans and, all that, like
his dignity.
Yeah, and Aegon doesn't have any of those things, so there's no dynamic between the two. It's not that Aegon's likable, but there's no really good qualities in him. And who knows how that get bled
It's
out.
mostly wasted potential. You can see
Right.
glimpses of a charismatic person who cares about people.
Happens a lot with the Targaryens, where they're like all charisma.
Yeah.
Even like with King Aerys and Aegon the Unworthy, they talk about how they were very charismatic when they were young.
That's probably a good comparison. Yeah. He needed to be grounded and trained, and he maybe could have been an okay king. But he was just, everything was the worst circumstances for him. So he's drinking heavily. He's flying into battle. It's very reckless. That's why it's like, it's kind of like when someone is, because first of all, he's despondent before he does it. He's told he can do nothing. He's just head down. He's pushing the thing off the table, and he's just doesn't know what to do. And he needs to smash something. He needs to take action. And so, he gets on Sunfire without telling anyone what he's doing. And he's just going to fly out to battle and prove himself or not. And so it's kind of like, someone that takes off in their sports car late at night in the Trans Am, if you will, and just drinking and driving and just seeing what happens, kind of see if we can find some trouble.
Well, what directly leads to that, you're talking about, how he's despondent, he was drinking, etc. And the reason for that is he's finally been made completely aware of how little his mother thinks of him. Like how low her opinion is of him. And he has these kind of double take moments, like right when they were, remember when he asked Alicent, "Do you love me?" And she's, "Oh my God, you're an idiot." Which is not a great answer.
I sort of forgot about that.
Probably not something my mom would say, hopefully mom. But anyway, you wonder why Aemond has mommy issues, and Aegon clearly has mommy issues, because that is what convinces him to do extreme things. He has a big issue with his mom, because his dad was basically absent. His mom was, around, but she was not the caring, supportive figure that he needed. So, the fact that he not only doesn't have her approval, which he wants, how does he get her approval? And he's like, well, I got to do something big. I got to show them all. And, he showed them something.
I'm as fierce as any of them. And he gets points for courage, certainly. But, okay, so with Aemond...
There's his one redeeming value. I was wrong earlier.
Yeah, no.
Balls.
Balls of Valyrian steel. And so with Aemond and Larys, so Aemond is obviously he tried to kill his brother, and Larys did kill his brother and father. So they're both ruthless and cold, and they're both doing it specifically to play the Game of Thrones, and they both have the Kylo Ren thing going on, where they're like, Aemond doesn't kill his mom, but he sends her away and cuts himself off from the mothering that some of him probably wants. It's kind of like too late. He's like, I think
his time in the brothel pretty well illustrates that he wants that kind of mothering.
Right, but he's saying to Alicent, it's too late. I did want that. but it's too late now. We're moving the hands. Like,
Yeah.
but we're done with that.
We need a substitute hand. And now I can't go back to that, prostitute because it's awkward. So, well, I don't want to give spoilers.
Well, and it's almost like the whole thing is parallel. Like when he's asking her about what's your place, like you served the realm admirably, but that time is over.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, thanks. You were a great parent, but that time is over. And so,
yeah,
what is it you do
were
here?
The regent. Now
Yeah.
I am the regent.
Yeah. And so he is cutting himself off. And then Ewan Mitchell, the actor, said in the behind the scenes that like part of that was his mom makes him emotional and he can't have that. You know, if you're going to be playing tough guy, you don't need your mom over your shoulder going, now Aemond. It's like, no, it's not.
Boldness is commendable, but just talks over her when she says that. But
yeah, it's straight loser talk, mom.
Yeah.
So he sends her away. And so Laurys and Aemond, they both kind of got laughed at, right? They both kind of got teased.
So I think this is something that you meant. I mean, the Kylo Ren thing, I think, is spot on, because you could make the mistake of thinking that either of these people are lacking empathy, like they just straight up don't have it, because they do behave like what would look like from the outside as lacking empathy, psychopathy, sociopathy, like however the spectrum is defined now. I'm not a psychiatric professional, but
I've mostly been informed that those terms are out of date.
Yeah. So please excuse my ignorance, but you notice in certain scenes, like when he is talking to Mommy Prostitute, and he's talking about how he regrets Lucerys, like killing him, that it was an accident and he didn't mean to, and he feels bad about it.
Right.
That is, I mean, if he were lacking empathy, that wouldn't be a thought that would come up.
Right. So that place with I prefer the sex worker as a term, but
okay.
That little place in the brothel is his safe spot. It's his little womb where he can let out the little bits of guilt that he has.
Yeah, it's a parallel of Daemon trying to crawl back into the womb.
Oh, is that what he was doing? And so, don't make me regret having you over here. and so, give me your fish emojis. No, don't wait. Oh, brutal. You do what you want in the chat. I take no responsibility. And so the point is, this is a safe little place. Yes, bite off whatever you're about to say. This is a safe little place where Aemond can let loose, get some amount of absolution. It's a little confession box.
Yeah.
And just like the priest isn't supposed to tell anyone what you confess, it's supposed to be a safe place. There we go. We got some blue fish. For the blue dress. It's teal. Look. It's teal. Can you believe they were arguing about the dress? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Allison's dress is teal, and there's tweets with thousands of likes. I will not be gaslit into saying this is not a blue dress. What do you mean? It's obviously green. And I commented, I was like, we have words like teal.
What's the dress from a few years ago? The white gold or blue black, and everybody was fighting about it.
Oh, right. Yeah. People were acting like it was one of those. They'd be like, no, it's blue-green. That's what teal is.
And a lot of people found out they were colorblind that day.
Yes, I guess suppose so. Or like partially.
No more fish emojis. King's Landing is sick of fish.
Devoted to Mariah walked in at a strange time. Welcome, Devoted to Mariah. Okay, so is that the same pair of jeans photocopied on both of them? A Theory of Ice and Fire? No.
No, his have authentic battle damage.
Yeah,
mine do not.
Yeah.
So like you see that scene in the brothel. He is in his safe space, which Aegon invades. But
oh yeah, that's true.
But then
very offensive.
When Larys is at Aegon's, bedside, he actually has a moment of kind of vulnerability, and you see the lone tear go down his cheek when he's talking about the way his dad used to talk about him, and it's clear that he's hurting, and this has been a response to that rather than well, I lack empathy and they were in my way and I wanted power.
And I want to shout out Quinn the GM. Did a great video. Quinn the GM has a certain foot thing that he had surgery for when he was like 10, and he was sharing all about it on his video. And it's about how George Martin writes disability. I watched it this morning.
Oh, that showed up on my feed, but
it's a really good video, and always appreciate when people open up and share their personal experience. I sometimes talk about like ADHD or various things, or being a childless adult, as we just did. Sorry, I didn't mean to expose you like that.
No, it's well, yeah. I'm obviously. I think if they haven't put together that
we're YouTubers. What do you think?
I'm also ADHD. I've got a lot of other problems too. We could talk about. We are on the couch.
We are on the couch. So the point is, check out Quinn the GM's video about how George Martin writes disability. Very thoughtful. Very much enjoyed that. Thank you, Quinn, for sharing your experience. And that was a great scene with Lars and Aegon. And Lars is giving Aegon actual useful advice. It feels a little bit different than all the scenes where Lars is always like, blah, 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 which is kind of how he approaches everyone. Yeah. But instead, he's being more direct. He's kind of looking right at him, and he's saying, look, this is how it's going to be. And there was a funny moment when he's like, you can use that to your advantage. And Aegon's just like, no. He's like, I don't want any advantages. I don't want to play the Game of Thrones anymore.
You think this guy's mind is an advantage?
Yeah, but Larys is like, well, yeah, but you are in danger. You are still playing the Game of Thrones, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And so this was a really interesting conversation where they related to each other a little bit.
It was a huge parallel. I'm sorry, but I got to say it was a huge parallel. And Larys in general is a huge parallel to this character. Varys on Tyrion's sickbed after the Battle of the Blackwater.
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't been a while since I read that scene.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Tyrion's kind of disability was a pre-existing thing. I mean, he just got, sliced across the face. It wasn't debilitating, but he already had the debilitating issue with his twisted legs and all that. And They even refer to it the same way. They talk about, Tyrion's twisted legs going up the stairs and how much they hurt. And it's like, with the clubfoot, they're talking about how his leg was so twisted. They're using similar terminology. It's a little bit snaky and dragony too, but it's neither here nor there. It's just the tea.
Well, so you can definitely see Aegon trusting Larys going forward. And of course, we saw both Alicent and Larys clinging to Aegon as a potential source of power. Like, Alicent gets kicked out of the small council. She goes right to Aegon and is talking to the Maester like, you said he was doing better. Like, is he going to get back to being king anytime soon? Because,
I got such "Are we there yet?" vibes.
Yeah. And yeah.
How long do I have to pretend to be a mother? Like, she did feel bad. I did think that she was like, she's looking at her mistakes as a mother, and she's like, I do feel bad. I want good things for him. I don't know how to be a parent. And, this whole, being there with my child and emotionally available for them. I'm not good at it, and I'm trying. How long is it going to take?
She at least senses that she hasn't done something, and she's trying to make up for it, even though it's late.
Yeah.
And it is a touching moment. I mean, anytime you have a parent and a child like that. So the thing that's different between Larys and Aemond. Larys uses his perceived weakness to essentially trick people. So he's using guile. Mm-hmm. Now, Aemond is not doing that. He's doing the opposite thing. He is using fear to control people, and he has a dragon. So that's not...
Yeah.
It probably plays in...
probably would do, he would probably use the fear as well if he had a dragon.
And so, dragon or not, like, all the magical stuff in Ice and Fire is always just an analogy for, like, things that people actually deal with. And so, essentially, you could include Tyrion in this. Because Tyrion, at times, uses the Larys technique of, like, letting people underrate him and then surprising them. But he also embraces fear later in his arc when he's monstrous to the woman at Illyrios. Right? He's like, he makes her afraid of him, and he kind of likes it. And so this darker turn for Tyrion is sort of moving almost from a Larys-like strategy to an Aemond-like strategy.
He had used it sparingly before.
True.
With people like Janos Slynt.
Yes.
And scaring... they put someone in the bowl of brown, if I'm recalling correctly.
Sir Simon Silvertongue.
There it is. Sir Simon's
a
great name. I forgot that was him.
Sir Simon Silver Soup. Bowl of tongue.
Better than fish at this point. But, I think all of the people who play the Game of Thrones, like, when you're playing a game that's that is that dangerous and desperate, you kind of use all of what's at your disposal. And the smarter people like Larys, Varys, Tyrion, Littlefinger, etc., they, they will try to use those perceived disadvantages. Like Littlefinger is a shorter guy from a not very powerful house. Tyrion plays up that he's, a drunken lech and a dwarf. Varys plays up the fact that he's, he's a eunuch and he's got, some effeminate affectations and he's got, the powder and all that. They all use these things to kind of get people off their guard and to underestimate them, like Larys. Soft power.
Right. And so we see Aemond using fear to control people, but in this very sort of calculated way. And it is, like I said, I think the best comparison is Tywin. It really is. Like, there's not too many other characters that have a mixture of intelligence and just enough restraint. Like, Tywin's, he goes to, like, there is a rage to what Tywin does.
Sure.
Like, with the Red Wedding,
but he is also calculated.
But calculated in how he meets it out. And I think so that really is how I see Aemond.
Yeah, I mean, controlled brutality, or just kind of, you wonder if that's kind of a similar scenario, because we never really get in Tywin's head, and we don't get like a really humanizing scene.
Oh, but they do tell us that he was constantly suffering these insults from King Aerys for years and years.
Oh yeah, he was boiling up
and just writing it down until he finally turned on him. Yeah, so this is very similar.
Yeah. So, you wonder if he was doing a little bit of that similar.
Is that guy a theorist or a male model?
Empathy suppression.
Why can't it be both? A theory of ice and fire.
Why male models?
Don't get him started. Sorry, I had to interrupt you.
No, it's all good. But yeah, it seems like maybe if we knew Tywin better, we would kind of find out that he is doing some empathy suppression. Because we get the idea when they characterize his relationship with Joanna, that, he was somebody who could be happy and all of those things, and that he, was maybe a more human character before.
Wait, does that mean I'm the ugly one now? What's happening?
No.
You just have nicer hair.
I
cut my hair off.
I'm newer. I'm shinier. Yeah. I'm straight out of the womb. Not going back in. I'm still wet. They haven't even wiped me off.
I'm just fishing for compliments.
Oh, I'm so sick of fish.
Oh, fish again. Brutal. Okay. So I want to go and grab a fresh drink from the fridge, and I want to pivot to symbolism.
All right.
And so, where do we want to start?
Oh, God, they're taking things that I say out of context, and I don't think before I speak.
We approve this message.
When I'm on a rant.
We approve this message.
Oh, God, I'm still wet.
Thank you, Kate Monster.
I should not have said that. Give me that Hagrid.
Somebody put this stuff on TikTok as soon as possible. There we go. Oh, look at all these comments.
And I thought my intro to TikTok would be me doing Tywin Lannister and Jorah Mormont and stuff. Nope, it's me saying I'm super wet on.
Well, the best thing is when you have other people creating accounts to mess with you. Like, I have a Twitter hater. That's it's like a David Lightbringer parody account.
Oh, that's flattering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's less than flattering, but yeah, that exists. So, symbolism, Aemond One-Eye. Let's talk about Rook's Rest first. And this, we have to give a spoiler warning. In order to talk about Aemond's symbolism, we're going to talk about the future events in Fire and Blood. So, if you don't want to be spoiled for things that Aemond is going to do, by the way, they're going to be war crimes.
Yeah, earmuffs. Earmuffs. And just
later.
Look at the male models. No more hearing.
Just mute this whole thing and play with the chat.
Yeah.
But start with Rook's Rest. We've got a guy in black clothing killing the Sun Dragon. Open shut case of symbolism, right?
Oh my! So you weren't ready to be hurt, so you didn't want to necessarily look at a lot of the symbolism in that scene.
It was there
So
though.
it was there to a point, and obviously you could debate how much of it was intentional by the showrunners and the director, etc. But I think this is a much better scenario than the swirls. And I remember when you put that video out, I really wanted to believe the swirls. I wanted to believe that D&D had something more. They had a little more depth than they did, but they never handled the magic aspects of this well, and we're seeing them tackle the magic head on in this show. And so I'm a little more optimistic than you, again, because I'm still wet. But
I was spiraling. You sent me spiraling.
Yeah, sorry. A downward spiral with the spirals.
Well, let me throw this at you. I noticed it's kind of Icarus-like, with Aegon himself taking out the solar chariot and crashing it.
Yeah.
Well, that just occurred to me.
Flying a little too close to the sun there. That's the solar chariot. That's a different story.
Oh.
Icarus is with the wings, but it's a similar idea.
Helios.
Yeah, Helios and his son.
Oh, I totally bungled that on the other stream.
Well, they're...
David Lightbringer, so-called experts like David Lightbringer.
Oh my God, your Twitter troll, more fuel. But yeah, I mean, there's similar stories with similar morals. Like, the idea is, you fly too close to the sun as Icarus, like, it's dangerous,
So Icarus has the wax wings.
Right.
And he makes them to fly upright, and he melts and falls. Apollo, and I think Apollo and Helios are...
The story's been told both ways. Because Apollo replaced Helios without a blink,
Syncretism.
Right.
Similar to parallelism, but yeah. It's when the deities get smushed together.
Yeah, where
kind of absorb each other.
Selene became Artemis, basically.
Yeah. So the point is there's daddy sun god, and then there's the young sun prince, and the young sun prince, who's either Helios or Apollo, says, I'm as fierce as any of them. I can drive my father's solar chariot. And so the four fiery horses that pull the sun, they're not used to him, and it's all out of control. And in one version of the story, the Sahara Desert is where the solar chariot crashes.
That's canon for the world, as far as I'm concerned. That's a much better origin story than... No, I mean, in
actual fact, the Sahara Desert has been created and turned green like over 200 times in this constant cycle. It greens and then it desertifies back and forth over and over. But I've been watching some cool documentaries. That's neither here nor there.
It's a little here nor there, because those are the kind of things that George pays attention to when he's world building. But we don't necessarily have to go back that far. Yeah, I mean, he had a few drinks and he got behind the wheel of that 1967 Sunfire, and
that works.
It did not.
Pontiac Sunfire. That's it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely... George always has these kind of things in mind. He's created common threads from a lot of these myths with morals that are very... Since the stories are so kind of basic and bare bones, you can apply it to so many scenarios. So it works really well there. But like the symbolic elements of Rook's Rest, it was wild. I mean, you have Vagar waiting in the woods as like very much a Knight's Queen figure, White Walker of the woods.
So let's slow down. Let's do this piece by piece. So the others, in case you didn't know, their origin in the books seems to be tied to the Weirwoods, the Green Men, dead green seer spirits in the Weirwood trees, the children of the forest. I'm going to be vague right now because I don't want to get into details. But the point is that the White Walkers seem to be a corruption of green magic. They come from the tree. They're the White Walkers of the wood. If you want to think about them as pissed off Weirwood spirits, that would be pretty close to the truth, I think. You can check out Weird Walkers or my Ice Spiders video for that. But the point is, even on the show, we see that the children of the forest create the Night King, and he creates the White Walkers. So the origin of the others and the White Walkers is like messed up Weirwood magic, messed up children of the forest magic. And so we see Aemond Night King in the woods on his green Mother Earth dragon, his Nana dragon, in the woods, hidden on the ground. So it's like the earth goddess rising up out of the earth and becoming this monster, this vengeful side of nature, which again, part of the others and the White Walkers represents climate change or just the idea of man's relationship with nature turning adversarial.
Being fractured.
Right, being fractured and broken.
And like, it really reeks of, she was on a hill in a clearing in the fort. So it kind of makes you think of her partially as the werewood. And like how we have these, werewood colonies with the roots under a hill, and that's where the green seers are. So her coming up from that is very much, it's demonstrative of the White Walkers coming out of the wood. And that's actually the language they use when they come out to fight.
Emerging
Waymar.
From the dark of the wood.
Right.
And so emerging from the dark of the wood is Night King Aemond with this horrible power, this just terrifying, destructive power. And so he comes up, and he takes out the sun and the moon, essentially.
Right.
Melis is playing
Fire.
The moon, the fire moon, if you want to be specific. Thank you.
Yeah.
I did it again. I've done it twice now. I've done it again. And
well, it's just a time lapse. It goes from fire moon to ice moon when you
that's it. Yeah. So this is the switcher, and then off. Okay, I see. There we go. Ice moon step. Oh, I'm so sorry. Anyways. He kept playing with his moon. This was a bad stream. It was dumb. And I hate your stupid sipping drink noises. Sorry. Some people consider that ASMR. And so, yeah, the sun and the moon are in the sky, and along comes... So Aemond is kind of like the comet now, if you want to talk mythical astronomy. Okay, because remember, the whole thing is that when the moon is destroyed, it wanders too close to the sun in the myth. And this is describing an eclipse, when the moon appears to be wandering in front of the sun. And so the myth essentially describes somewhere on Earth, I'm assuming Karth to Ashai region, the comet hitting the moon happened during an eclipse, which probably suggests that Bloodstone Emperor is doing specific magic. He's calling the comet so that it hits at this time, or he has foreseen this celestial calamity in the stars and is so using magic at that exact time. Something like that.
And one of the results of having all that, debris fallout from that cataclysm is that only a certain spectrum of light is going to get through, and it's going to make the moon red.
That's true. If you've ever seen the moon or the sun during a forest fire, everything gets really red and purple and wonky.
And George's long night canceled show was Blood Moon.
Right.
Which had meteors in the stage direction. It was a validation of the moon meteor theory.
You guys tell me, by the way, would there be enthusiasm for watching me try to go through my theories under the influence of Super Mario Brothers power-ups that are red and white, like weirwood trees, sometime? I don't know if I could monetize the stream, but it would be fun. In any case, let me know if you want to see that. That could get interesting about an hour and a half deep, I think.
Yeah. If you're interested in Mushroom the Maester.
Oh, yes, right. No, he's not the Maester. He's just one of the sources. Oh.
No.
Oh, the chat says yes. Look at that.
Oh, God.
It's like, yes, make your theories even more incoherent. And so, Aemond is coming along like the comet, essentially, at the beginning of this fight. And he is impacting the sun and the moon when they are aligned. The sun and the moon have wandered too close to each other. They're tangled up. Here comes the comet. Then we get this explosion. Then what happens? The moon and the sun both fall out of the sky.
Because of the long nights. The sun is blocked during the long night. You can't see it, so it's, symbolically dead.
And then the moon meteors fall out of the sky and crash. Right.
Well, and we see that it's always the fire moon first.
Yes.
And we see this in every analogy, like, when an Azor Ahai figure has two lunar wives, one of them's fire, one of them's ice, the fire one goes first. Whether it's Elia of Dorne for Rhaegar, whether it's Rhaenys for Aegon, it's the
Rhaenys is a great let's stick with that for a second.
Sure.
So during the conquest, Princess Rhaenys on her dragon Meraxes of silver scales, but silver and copper. Mm-hmm. Rhaenys has she is essentially the fire moon to Aegon, whereas Visenya is the ice moon. And of course, Aemond riding Visenya's dragon, some more Night King symbolism. But if you remember, Rhaenys shot out of the sky, and she crash lands in Dorne, right?
Her dragon got shot through the eye with a scorpion bolt.
Go on.
Well,
You're saying like that it means something.
Well, let's see. We lose an eye, and we gain a dragon. It's just repeating Odin symbolism.
That's okay. Well, that's something that we need to explain. So that's a good thing to bring up.
Sure.
So Rhaenys shot out of the sky, both Rhaenyses, both fire moon symbols, and then in the book version of the battle, they all die at the same time. So there's not this delay where first Sunfire and Aegon fall out of the sky, and then there's another bit to the battle, and then Rhaenys crash lands on Rookrest. In the books, it all happens at the same time, but it's more or less the same. Rhaenys crashes on Rook's Rest on the castle. So this is showing us the moon meteors falling to the ground, blowing things up, destroying the civilization of man, etc., etc.
Well, and when Rhaenys, Meleys, Sunfire, and Aegon, when they all go down to the ground, there's been so much fire being breathed by Vhagar, etc., that the entire area is just ash and smoke, and it's very Long Night-esque.
Totally, and we saw that with the battlefield being covered in smoke and stuff. So, and then so with the Aemond, with the Odin thing, and this is a major part of Aemond's Night King symbolism. So the legend that we're talking about is there's two legends really with Odin, but the thing about Odin is that all of his stories are about him sacrificing himself to gain magic in different ways, because he's the god of shamanism. And so that's what shamans are doing, essentially, is they're sacrificing and denying pleasures of the flesh in order to attain spiritual mastery. It's just a monastic lifestyle.
And also doing a lot of mushrooms.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just a more dramatic version of a monastic lifestyle. Those are just the plant teachers, and substances are just aids on this journey or whatever. It's a small version of death and transcendence. So Odin, we're talking about the Well of Mimir. In order to drink from the Well of Mimir, which gives you great wisdom and magic power and stuff, there are specific things that you get. I like to be non-specific because this is really just the only thing that's important is for an analogy. And in Ice and Fire, you're going to get a different kind of magic. You're not drinking from the Well of Mimir. You're gaining Lightbringer, or you're eating the Weirwood paste that gives you Green Seer powers. Doesn't matter. It's magic power. It's the trade-off. And so he sacrifices an eye. He pops it out, throws it in the well, and that gives Mimir something. Mimir is able to do something with Odin's eye. That, by the way, there's a total trade-off there. But he gets to drink from the well. And so he gains this magic power at the cost of an eyeball. And then later, he hangs on Yggdrasil, the tree, for 9 days and nights. He either dies or achieves a near-death state. It's, it's symbolism, whatever. But he's suffering for 9 days and nights. And then he sees the runes and he seizes them up. And this gives him transcendent magical power. And so with Aemond, we see similarly, it's expressed as a trade, right? Like he's the same night that he loses his eye, he gains a dragon and then says, Mom, don't worry, it's worth it because I got it. So he's equating the one for the other.
Can we separate the two actions here? Because I think there's an important distinction between those two actions of Odin in the way that, so he loses the eye, he gets...
The chat's telling me to let you cook, so yes.
Oh, okay. I won't cook fish.
Apparently I was not letting you cook. I was throwing your soup out.
No. Well, I mean, we're talking about the same things here, and we both know this stuff pretty well. But the idea is like he loses an eye into the Well of Mimir, and he gains, omniscience. Like he's able to see everything. I mean, when he sacrifices himself to the tree, he's able to see the runes in the language of the universe.
Right.
And when you can use the runes, like that gives you a certain amount of control over the
third eye concept. You shut physical eye to open a magical eye.
I mean, and the idea is you lose that eye, you open a new eye. In George's idiom, that's like gaining green sight or skin changer on a lower level. Like, so, when you see Meraxes get shot through the eye in a place called the Hellholt, which Holt just means like a wood, like a forest.
Right.
So it's
the evil wood.
The fiery wood. This is the fiery, and it's
okay.
Hell is
Burning
an underworld
wood.
place, and the werewood net is a type of afterlife when the green seers go in there upon death. So you have her going into this, fiery wood. It's basically an inverse werewood net, or to a point, it's the same as the werewood net.
It is because
fire of the gods.
Because the weirwood tree is set on fire when all this happens. Like in the Grey King myth, when he obtains the fire of the gods, the weirwood tree is set on fire and becomes the conduit.
Well, that's why they have the red leaves that are alternately described as bloody and fiery.
Right. So we got some. I'm also thinking of the new viewers as we are talking some very advanced level symbolism. So periodically,
sure. Yeah.
The reason I'm not trying to not let him cook. What I'm doing is I'm pausing to try to make sure that we are explaining this stuff so it doesn't sound like we ate a bunch of mushrooms.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've tried to explain some of your theories and then some of the things that I think about the series to people who are not, indoctrinated 5 cork boards deep. So, and it's so hard. So,
I will cook anyone on the Grey King. Do not test me. That is true. No, what we're talking about here is the idea that the legend of Azor Ahai killing Nissa Nissa in a blood magic ritual to gain the power of Lightbringer is actually tied to the creation of the others and the violation of the weirwoods. Remember, I said the others are like angry weirwood spirits. The way to explain this is just, I can't tell you how I've proved this because you have to watch videos, but think about Nissa Nissa as a child of the forest. She is an elf. And all the people that symbolize Nissa Nissa have this elf child of the forest symbolism. And the whole point of Azor Ahai killing her is actually to gain the power of the weirwood net. And so it's not the magic sword that he was trying to get in this version of the story, but the magic power of the weirwood net. And by killing Nissa Nissa and going through her, literally her heart, like a heart tree, he's able to obtain this fire of the gods. Excuse me. And so, Azor Ahai going into the internet, or into the weirwood net, sets it on fire, Sean. That's the point I'm trying to make. It corrupts. The only way, he's not a green seer. And so the only way he can get in there is to force himself in with blood magic and by changing the weirwood net so that it suits him. And that is the setting it on fire, the turning it into a hell hold.
Well, and there's always going to be both. So it's like a yin yang. You're going to have a little bit of ice in the fire and you're going to have a little bit of fire in the ice at all times.
Well, the freezing seems like as a response, right? So to finish painting the basic picture here, when Azor Ahai goes into the weirwood net and sets it on fire, what happens to the green spirits that were in there? They get burned out and they are now homeless. They are homeless wandering spirits. They're out in the cold. They become the others. There is another step to give them icy bodies. But that is where they come from. They are exiled tree spirits.
And homelessness is criminalized in Westeros.
Gavin Newsom is going to tear down the others' homeless camps, I heard.
Oh, boy.
So, anyway, that's too obscure for anyone to start arguing about in the chat. Let's say
California. So
it's obscure. Internal California laws. So.
But, yeah.
I'm not going to be president. Tear down those homeless camps.
Yeah.
I've had it.
So, you are creating this analogy between, Rhaenys and Rhaenys, Meleys and Meraxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go one further. And I mean, I'm close to 100% certain you've made this point before, but Meleys is very much, her nickname is the Red Queen. She's very much an analogy to Meleys Sandra.
Oh, absolutely. Who was another Fire Moon character.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, Stannis is a Night's King figure. He's got his wife, Celise, who's very much an Icy Moon figure, a Night's Queen figure. She has the blue winter roses
so
on her
easy
sigil.
to diagnose.
Yeah,
frigidness.
and then they say his true queen, or his Red Queen, is Melisandre. So he's got both, just like any good Azor Ahai or Night's King has got both.
In fact, Durin Durrandon, who co-authored The Great Empire of the Dawn theory with me all the way back on Westeros.org before it was a video, one of his foundational essays was called Red Queen, Blue Queen.
Yeah.
There's a longer title, but it has that in the title.
Yeah, so it was the Dr. Seuss thing. I remember it. That was a good essay.
And yeah, and it's talking about just this stuff. So your Blue Queens are your, Val, Lyanna, Visenya, these icy, Night's Queen women. And your Red Queens are these fiery moon women with Daenerys, Melisandre, Catelyn, Some people do both. Sansa does both. Catelyn does both too. Like, she's fiery when she's alive.
Well, I think all of them are capable of both, and he basically, the setting dictates how they're going to portray their symbolism.
And honestly, I think this is the part of the theory people like the most, is the idea of Nissa having this revenge. Like, her story's not over.
Yeah.
When she's killed. She becomes Night's Queen, or some part of her does. She becomes a Corpse Queen, and she is now the leader of the others. She's more powerful than Night's King, seemingly.
Yeah, well, you get that whole storyline where obviously, like, Azor Ahai either commits this horrible act, or at the other side of the grayscale, it's procreative.
Right.
And then you have Nissa, revenge, or, obviously other side of the grayscale. But then at the end of this, after these two acts, there's kind of a love story and a resolution where the cycle of violence ends. And George writes it so well because he writes it in the narrative level as well as the kind of background level. And when he does it, it's so tragic. It's the kind of we should have stayed in that cave, Jon Snow.
Yes. And my favorite version of it might be the reverse reading of the prologue, where you have that moment with Waymar, where it's like a lover's kiss or whatever as he's strangling him.
Checking my 5 o'clock shadow earlier.
Uh-huh. So check out We Should Start Back, a Game of Thrones prologue, if you want to really see the idea of Azor Ahai and Nissa having this reunion at the end of the story, somewhere deep in the Weirwood Net.
It's also it's on your anywhere you can find the podcast. It's up on there too.
Oh yes, thank you. By the way, we do have a mythical astronomy podcast. I was totally supposed to mention that and have been forgetting. If you prefer your stuff in podcast format, that is out there. And so Aemond, he has done this thing. He has sacrificed. He has killed the Moon Queen, Rhaenys, and Meleys, the Red Queen. He has taken the power of the Weirwood Net and turned it into this evil power. He's pulled the sun out of the sky, and then you notice Sunfire crashing into the woods. That is a picture, I would say unintentionally, but it's because George wrote it intentionally into the original battle plan, and so it comes out on the TV. But Sunfire crashing into the woods, that is Azor Ahai going into the Weirwood Net and setting it on fire. And then Night's King shows up to survey his handiwork.
And I would go one step further, and he takes the dagger, which is kind of like a baby sword. So if you're looking at the other end of the gray scale where it was procreative, and Azor Ahai and Nissa had a baby, Lightbringer, you see, the Night King doing a baby snatch, just like Ned did a baby snatch with Jon, just like Sam and Gilly did a baby snatch with Monster. Like it's these things repeat, and it's most often portrayed in the fostering of children with other different houses.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what the book version of that is. Oh, they took Meleys's head back to King's Landing. That's what it was.
But it's Aemond sitting down, and even they put a lot of emphasis on the fact that he has this dagger now. He pointed with it.
They did.
So,
but let me talk about the Meleys head for a second, because this is really cool. I remember this when I figured this out. There's always, to Sean's point, they always recover Moon Meteor from the crash site. So if the God's Eye battle, Dark Sister get jammed into Aemond's skull, spoiler alert, and the dragon and Aemond and Dark Sister are all in the bottom of the lake, in the God's Eye, in the Weirwood Net, and then what is recovered?
Both the sword and the skull.
Well, actually, it's even before that. It's the fact that Aemond is taking the sword into the Weirwood Net. That's there's a couple things going on here.
Into the thick of it.
But the point is, let me make one point at a time. There's several points. When they bring Meleys's head from the crash site back to King's Landing, that is essentially the same thing as taking a moon meteor and taking it to a temple. And the Bloodstone Emperor, of course, if you remember, worships a black meteor that fell from the sky, and that gives him magic power in some sort of Lovecraftian sense. He casts down the true gods, i.e. the sun and the moon, and he worships the black stone. And so we have a similar thing where Aemond kills the sun, and he kills Rhaenys as a Nissa figure, and then he takes a piece of the moon dragon, Melis, and takes it home with him. So this because the meteors are important. Lightbringer is made from the meteorites. Like Dawn is probably one version of Lightbringer. It's made from a meteorite. Bloodstone Emperor.
Yeah, that one was sanitized by the Breaking Bad crew, so it's white instead of black.
Yes. And I just think you need 2 swords or whatever. I don't know how many meteors there are, but you can see the same pattern. Over in the east, we have Bloodstone Emperor worshipping a black meteor, and we have Azor Ahai coming along with Lightbringer right after, which is probably a black sword like Valyrian steel or black swords.
When are the swords not pairs? The swords are always a pair. Elric of Melniboné, Silmarillion,
right?
Like, they're always a pair.
Always a pair. And so then you've got the Dawn, which is a white meteor sword. So the meteors are important, and in all these parallels, you see meteors being recovered from the crash sites, and the meteors are also like the babies, to your point. So after these fights, we're doing
Ned takes Dawn and Jon.
Exactly. That was
Well, and like to your point with the dragon's head as a meteor symbol, like first of all, like dragons are always meteors. The dragons are always meteors. But this is a fiery red dragon, fire blood, however you want to look at that, fire moon with black iron bone.
Right.
So it's
right. They didn't do that
the
on the
heart.
show.
When you describe how Dawn was made, they say made from the heart of a fallen star.
Right.
So you go inside, all the steaming blood, you get
and that's why the White Walker bones look like Dawn.
Yeah, they're really on it about Avatar: The Last Airbender in the chat.
What are they talking about?
Well, Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's clear that the writer really knows mythical astronomy.
Yeah, there's a lot of ice and fire.
A fire meteor that gives all the firebenders a bunch of extra power. The moon gives all the waterbenders a bunch of extra power. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in it. They made a sword out of a meteor for Sokka.
That's what you do.
Yeah,
that's what you do.
It wasn't a pair, but
and that's why, by the way, I have this red and black foam keeper, which I need to do. I painted this thing many years ago. It's come flaking off a little bit, but this is, of course, in the books. Oathkeeper goes from a black sword to being a red and black sword. This is making you nervous, Sean.
No, I'm good because it seems a little big, so you could make a couple really small swords or daggers out of that with you could call them Foam Keeper and FOMO.
Foam Keeper and what's the widow's wail analogy? Foam Keeper and FOMO. In any case, the point is. Ned's sword works as a perfect model for this, and it gets turned into Lightbringer, and it changes hands when Ned dies. We don't need to talk about that.
Comic splitting is a little obscure.
I just wanted to wave my sword around, but it does get split in two. Also,
wanted to wave your sword around and give them all that foam
between two waving swords. New show title.
The Jonas Brothers want to give you their hot foam.
What?
Sorry, it's a South Park thing. Well, actually, it was real life too. The Jonas Brothers spraying their audiences with hot foam. It's fine. Let's not get into that. Don't clip it.
Your TikTok is raging right now.
If I had a TikTok, it would be raging.
Hey, David, I've been digging through your channel for the last month. Great work. You and all the people you've brought on have such great insights. Please do theories on the influence of Mario Brothers power-ups. That would be fun. I think it's got to happen.
Yeah.
I want to prove to y'all I can handle this stuff. I need to show y'all how this is done.
And I gotta say that I will not be a part of that because I can't talk about this stuff.
You'll be in the chat
on Mario. Yeah, I'll be in the chat, but I'm not functional.
Yeah.
On anything.
I'm always extremely functional.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get this stream demonetized.
That's his superpower. He had to kill a Nissa for it.
So one thing that's interesting about Aegon and Aemond is that they are showing two sides of the sun. And so in a sense, they are kind of showing the transformation of the sun. And so with the Eastern myth, there's the Lion of Night and the Maiden Maid of Light. And what happens is when the long night happens, the maiden maid of light turns her back on the world, and the lion of night comes out to terrorize everyone. Now, people had trouble with this myth for a while until, I will take credit, for finding a couple of obscure myths about a concept called the night sun. And my favorite one is the jaguar night sun from Mesoamerican mythology.
Atbal.
Is that? Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I looked it up. But the point is, Sunfire and Aegon are like the bright face of the sun. And when... Oh, no. I'm sorry. Pardon me, guys. Maiden Maid of Light, Lion of Night. So usually the lion is a sun symbol, right? So the Lion of Night is the sun of night. It's a night sun. It is the dark sun. And this is what happens during the long night. It's not just a clouded sky. It's perceived as the sun being sick or the sun being darkened. You would actually see it through the clouds, but it would be like this grayish purple shape that would appear hazily through a murk, like through a veil. And so essentially what we see, a lot of the solar kings, they get that darkened face symbolism, like Joffrey at the Red Wedding. He gets choked by the Strangler and his face turns dark purple. That's literally how the sun would look, dark purple. And so Aegon, his face is burned. We're going to see, I guess we did see that. Half of his face is burned, which is like turning your face, a maiden of light, turning her face. So there's all this face darkening idea. And then the Lion of Night comes out. The lion being a sun symbol, but it's dark. And it's similar to all these black crowns that these dark kings wear. Because normally the crown of a king is gold in emulation of the sun's rays. So a black crown is like a black sun. And we see most of our villains wearing black crowns for that reason.
Well, this comes up in kind of a different way. Like obviously like sun darkening with like you look at a black jaguar as being kind of the antithesis of a golden lion.
Right.
But there's kind of another element that's very similar is when you get like the red sun, like you're seeing it through debris and only certain colors are getting together. So
it's still an angry sun or a sick sun.
And you see that, and it's usually in mythology, it's characterized as a usurpation. You see it with like eclipses and stuff like that. So it's like you get, a sun god, a classic sun god like Ra in Egyptian mythology, and then the throne gets passed to Osiris, but Osiris immediately gets usurped by Set, which is basically what Lion King and Hamlet is based on. But
Set is a lot, very much, the Lion of Night is a lot like Set. That is a good analogy.
He's a storm god, but he also has elements of like a red sun, a usurping sun, and then he's replaced by Horus the Avenger, who also lost an eye. Yeah. They spun him a silver blue eye out of moonlight.
Right. That's right. Because I pointed out that the Egyptians do look at the sun and moon as two different eyes of gods.
That's one representation,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of confusing because we tend to think of the Egyptian myths as static, but they were over such a long period.
And there's a lot of regional versions too.
So another version is, Khonshu is literally the personification of the moon at some points of the day, and Ra is literally the personification of the sun. But then later on, it's Horus's eyes. So it's like it's complicated, but you trying to nail them down as facts is not the point.
Right, of course.
Right. So you're trying to get the esoteric meaning behind using each of those things as symbols.
And so when they're the two eyes of one deity, you're going to see that deity lose an eye and then replace it. Because the moon, what does it do? It disappears and comes back in its cycles. And so that's essentially what they're describing.
And I think that's an amazing segue to, I wanted to get into the linguistic roots of the name Aemond.
Cook away, my friend.
All right. So, like, first off, you can't help but notice there are similarities to Daemon, but the similarities are really important or the differences are more important to acknowledge. So, his name starts off with A-E, and in Old English, stemming from Old Germanic, and it made its way to a point into Norse, the A-E letter, when you combine it, that's a letter that does not exist in English. And the letter name is Ash.
Okay.
So specifically to the context of an ash tree. So like, and then monde in French means world.
So the Aesir, meaning the gods, they are tied to Yggdrasil inherently
Right.
by their name.
Right. So
Okay.
you get this ash tree, and then monde means world in French. So it's the world ash tree, Yggdrasil. But there's another implication there of like obviously like ash being like debris fallout in the air of the long night, so the world is covered in ash.
Oh.
But then another translation that we use of monde is when you look at Old Germanic Norse, like this is something that you brought up when you're talking about Odin, is that there's no differentiation between the D and the TH sound.
Uh-huh.
So you use them interchangeably. It's why the translation of Dorn matters, because it either means fist or thorn.
Uh-huh.
In this case, monde can mean month, which really just means moon. Month is named after the fact that it's
Right.
basically a moon cycle. So
I was
like,
thinking of like Mundi as in like Axis Mundi, which means the earth.
I mean,
right?
yeah. Well, and that's where the French root of monde, meaning world, comes from.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
So
all
Ash World.
yeah,
Ash covering the world.
yeah. It's like
Ash-
water world, but
Darkening of the world tree. Yeah, so this is a well chosen name.
yeah. So it's very yeah, ash and embla. Yeah, they're getting into it, and elm matters because that's actually something that he uses specifically in the context of like Duncan Egg with his little tree being an elm.
Oh, that's right. I never think about that.
Similar stuff. But yeah, it's he chose the name very specifically, and it makes him when he and Daemon started out, they were very similar, but Daemon is the fire moon. He's very much like
Yes.
Meleus on a red dragon,
Yes.
and he comes down from the sun like a sun spear
Mm-hmm.
when he flies super high
Mhm.
above Vagar, and then gets lost in the sun, shoots straight down at Vagar.
So he's
takes
like
out
a
the
moon meteor at that point. So this is the whole. So let's go to that fight.
Right.
When he dive bombs Aemond, him and Caraxes approach from the direction of the sun. So they are, from Aemond's point of view, they're superimposed over the sun, just like an eclipse. Just so Caraxes and Daemon are blotting out the sun right in front of it and then shooting down. So you have to mentally imagine the explosion.
Mm-hmm.
But he is once he shoots down, he is now the moon meteor dive bombing.
Yeah, and it's important that he be able to symbolize both of those things, because the red comet, or the dragon's tail to some people,
Right.
like the red comet hitting the moon is one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Then the moon, having, bleeding tears of meteor coming down, that's the other aspect. So we have to see both.
And the sword being Dark Sister is another part of this, because it's like the Dark Sister. Well, it's the second moon, the one that got darkened. And a piece of that got turned into a sword, which then stabbed the Weirwood Net. Stabbed the god in the eye. It stabbed the god's eye.
So much foam came out.
So much foam. So much sea foam. So that is, okay, so that's a little bit of what's going on with Aemond as far as his symbolism. He's showing us a lot of things about the Night's King. He's showing us how Azor Ahai becomes the Night's King, essentially, by trading in his eye, Odin-like, to gain this magic power. We see Waymar do that in the prologue. He loses an eye in the sword fight, but then he is resurrected and gains a magical, otherish life, and that's essentially the story. Euron is shaping up to be the big bad of the end of the story, and he similarly has this one blue eye. And so this is one of the reasons why we can know that in the books, even though there isn't a leader of the others figure yet, we can assume that one is coming, because George is spelling it out, that there is this figure who is like a wizard and who leads the others and who dies and gains the power of otherish life and then becomes a leader of the others. It's, check out the video of New Night's King, but it's basically Waymar, Aemond, and Euron that all tell this story.
And John, to a point.
And John,
Definitely
yes.
John. Well, and he's always retelling these archetypes in smaller ways with other people. But yeah, those are the big ones that are actually kind of telling it in the narrative as well as the symbolism. Not everybody gets that narrative spotlight.
Yeah, and so Daemon Well, I guess we could get lost with Daemon, but he's doing a last hero thing essentially.
He's already lost.
He's sacrificing himself in order to take out.
Say Scooby Daemon in Harrenhal. He's struggling. He's running through all the different doors, being chased by a ghost. It's a whole fucking thing.
It is a whole thing. All right, so let me turn this over to the chat. If you guys have any Night King questions, Night King Aemond questions, or otherwise, we can tackle those. We've hit most of what we wanted to talk about.
And can we talk about the Night King riding the Night's Queen in this scenario?
I suppose we have to now that you've teased it so effectively.
Foreplay is important. But
teasing it's important.
Yeah. So the dragon riding thing, there's always a sexual element, just because, you know, any Azor Ahai Nissa relationship, any Night's King Night's Queen relationship, which is oddly similar, is going to have that. It's going to have that sexual punch, because there is a procreative aspect, whether it's Azor Ahai and Nissa creating like Lightbringer Last Hero person, or whether it's the Night's King and Night's Queen creating a kind of similar inverse in the others. There's a procreative element where they have a baby who is kind of symbolically a sword, or a fiery sword, or a bloody sword.
Well, the chat is mentioning Alice Rivers. Alice Rivers, an obvious Night's Queen sorceress figure who is taking Aemond's seed and soul.
Whose name is way too similar to his mom's.
Alicent. Alice Rivers. Yes, and all the Night's Queen names have variants of that name. Alysanne, Sansa, Lysa, and then we also get into Lyanna as variants of that as well.
I don't want to get into the linguistic roots of it too much there, but there's definitely an in-world thing of like Tears of Lys, Tears of Lysa, Tears of Alyssa, like the Lys or Lis is, I mean, it's...
And I do think there's an Alice in Wonderland aspect. Nissa goes into the Weirwood Net, becomes Night's King, so that's kind of like an Alice in Wonderland journey.
Well, and Green Seeing is kind of through the looking glass. Alice through the looking glass.
But no, what does the name Alice mean? What do you think what's behind that etymology?
God, I didn't prepare that. I did have it at some point, and I put it in an essay, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
Alice in Chains. Yeah, they've come to snuff the rooster.
No, it's Alice in the Weirwood Net.
Oh, yeah.
Rooster, huh?
Yeah.
Is there some sexual symbolism there?
Ask Alan Cockshaw. Oh.
I can't. He's all wet.
He's all wet. That's true. He went down the hole.
He went into a moon well, volcanic caldera.
So let me check. I thought it was on top of the super chats, but let me see if I missed any.
Oh, okay. There are a couple new ones.
Do you think the dragon impacts confirm dragon bomb theory? So dragon bomb theory is the theory that the eggs are explosive and can be used as bombs. And that's why Summerhall was so explosive.
Ooh.
And that could be the explanation behind Hardhome, if you will. And it could be why the Faceless Men want that dragon's egg from Euron. That's dragon bomb theory.
Damn, I hadn't actually heard that. This is like the first time where I feel completely unprepared. There was no foreplay.
It's pretty tinfoil. You don't get foreplay with dragon bomb theory. It just explodes all in your face, whether you're ready for it or not.
I just try to take it as a compliment.
It is a compliment.
Okay.
When dragon bomb theory explodes in your face. Now, the point is,
here it's good for your hair, that
the dragons explode when they fall, which to me makes sense. You know, this little when they
at Rook's Rest when Meleys falls, conspicuously breaking the outer wall of the keep. I very much look at that as analogous to, Meleys is a dead dragon breaking the wall, and we very much get that later with a dead dragon being raised up. It's been heavily foreshadowed. I don't care that the show did it, but it has been heavily foreshadowed that Viserion is going to be raised and used to break the wall. I mean, like,
He's going to play some sort of ice dragon role. I think it's going to be an actual meteor, a moon meteor that breaks the wall, which is just a different kind of dead dragon.
Means the same thing. But I very much get that. Just, I think the biggest hint that was going to be a thing was that Miri Mazdur is in Viserion, where in the dream, the dragon popped out of Miri Mazdur's head. Mm-hmm. So you get the implication that Miri Mazdur, in a very, this was in your, Vedic Danny video, that Miri Mazdur is the spirit that went into Viserion, and her people are the Lazarene. Lazarus from the Bible being the guy who gets resurrected.
Oh, I didn't see that coming. Okay,
yeah,
sure.
So Lazarus resurrection there for Miri Mazdur, whether you want to look at that as her getting resurrected in the form of a dragon or her actual dragon self being unwillingly resurrected by the others.
So to take it back to Alice Rivers.
Yeah.
Alice Rivers ends up pregnant with Aemond's son, talks about having the dragon inside her, and then sets herself up as the Witch Queen of Harrenhal. Harrenhal is a very obvious parallel for the Night Fort. And so you have this idea of Aemond, Night's King, giving his seed and soul to the Night's Queen at the Night Fort, which is the legend. And so this child that she has in her belly, Aemond's son, who we do see as a young boy in the last recorded sighting of Alice Rivers, is the same as Baby Monster or Baby John. These children of Night's Queen women, and they're parallel to the others themselves.
And the prophecy dagger from Rook's Rest.
What about the prophecy dagger?
I view it as like the baby, the little baby Lightbringer taking it from the scene. But
right. Okay.
And John is a little prophecy child who gets baby snatched too. So, but I also view Rook's Rest as another parallel to Harrenhal and the Night Fort. Largely.
What about the name Rook's Rest?
Well, that's why.
Okay.
A rook is, a black bird in the same family as crows and ravens. So, like, the Night Fort is a fort for crows, the Night's Watch. Heron, a heron is a type of bird, and they call him Heron the Black.
Heron
so
the Black.
It's,
right.
There's, in every level, there's like this is a fortress for black birds to look down from.
And Heron was put to rest there. The Night's Watch are symbolically undead, and the first Night's Watchmen were undead, like Cold Hands.
Right.
So these are black birds that are at rest in that they are dead, and they also live there. So it's the rookery, like where they keep the ravens, is called the rookery.
Right.
So yeah, Rook's Rest is very much like the Night Fort or like the Wall, and that's why Sean's bringing up the idea that Melis, this moon dragon meteor, is breaking the wall at Rook's Rest. This is a major hint that a dragon thing, whether it's a literal dragon or a meteor, is going to be what breaks the wall.
That's why you hedge your bets with symbolism, because either way, you're right.
This is
how I do cold readings.
No.
And, convince
Sean.
people I'm psychic.
Well, if there's moon meteors in Winds of Winter, we all know I'm going to...
yeah, you'll take a few victory laps.
I'm going to explode in everyone's face like a dragon bomb.
So much fun. Oh, God. There will be fish in King's Landing for weeks.
How did fish become such a big part of the stream?
I don't know. But, we made peace with it. It's a part of the culture now.
It is. Queen of Fish, Alicent Hightower. It's no double.
Oh, God. Is that a thing?
That's what they were calling her.
Oh, that's so bad.
As if it was her. See, in the books, she's the one that orders the gates closed. So it makes more sense to call her the Queen of Fish because it's her fault.
Yeah, on the show, they wanted to emphasize the whole leopards eating faces aspect of this a little more, so they kind of took away some of her agency.
Yeah. So, let's see here.
And that's not like a, Lion of Night, Jaguar, leopard eating the face.
And yeah, this whole... Chad, I'm sorry. I apologize.
We're trying to keep up. And we're trying not to be any more quotable than has already happened. Don't clip it.
And so basically, what this means for the Dance of the Dragons is that we are in now the equivalent of the Long Night. The Solar King is dead. this evil person has come to power. This is the darkest part of it. And so this obviously at a certain point is ended when Aemond is taken down by Daemon at Harrenhal. And then that is sort of the beginning of the end. Now the clouds can eventually part or whatever. But
well, and I think an interesting conspicuous aspect of this that we get is after all of this, Aegon takes power again. And not only that, but when everything is over, it's a separate Aegon. So the entire point is that this
it's a cycle.
Named Sun King
Yeah.
does come back and take power back from the Night's King.
Right. So it's like a dream of spring. The sun is put back in the sky. And we've mentioned Mesoamerican myth, of course. It's a whole cycle of the suns dying and being replaced by something else that becomes the new sun.
Well, that Mesoamerican myth is especially interesting because they have a very similar thing going on with Morningstar, Evenstar. Like they view that as analogous to the sun, night sun, Morningstar, Evenstar, because they have a pair of brothers,
the hero twins that go down to the underworld and come back, right?
Well, I was going to say Quetzalcoatl and Zolotl or Axolotl.
Uh-huh.
They are specifically identified as the Morningstar and the Evenstar. And Quetzalcoatl, feathered serpent, everybody knows him very well. His twin brother, Zolotl or Axolotl, is the god of the underworld with a dog head, because you always got to have a dog in the underworld.
That is true.
We just want our puppers to foster us.
No, that is confirmed.
Next. But yeah, it's they do that very interestingly. There is some representation of both of those characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. Axel Florent is an axolotl character because
oh Jesus, really?
That whole Mesoamerican mythology is recorded in the Florentine Codex.
How have we never talked about this?
We did a little. It was a long time. It was a long time.
Axel Florent?
Axel Florent, and then a Lester Florent is referencing Alastor, one of the a horse god who pulls Hades' chariot. So it's a lot of underworld figures.
Guys, subscribe to Hero with 1,000 Voices because I think Sean's going to make videos about this stuff at some point.
Yeah, and also Peter Pan, because why not?
So this is a little preview of some of the stuff that is coming from Sean. And you guys know how it is when you try to give a little taste of a complex theory. But that's certainly tantalizing.
Yeah, no, and
Axolotl from the Florentine Codex.
Well, that's perfect because Axolotl is a dog-headed god, and then they have the fox sigil,
right? Which
is their diet
Close
Starks.
Enough, yeah.
They're just bargain bin Starks. Lester Florent is bargain bin Ned Stark. He even does all the things that Ned. He fails to lift the siege at Storm's End like Ned did. He calls him. He's like, "You know me for a man of honor," and it's like, "Well, no, you're a douche." But
right, and it's
Ned actually is known for that,
and that's partly what gives Celise Florent her Lyanna parallels.
Yes,
the blue flowers of the Florent sigil
and
form a crown, just like Lyanna's blue rose crown.
Well, and then Robert, obviously chasing after Lyanna, but he actually did have a baby with Delana Florent,
right,
and named him after Ned,
right. So another ice moon baby, and
yeah,
it's like history; it rhymes. Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, so wow. So Alice Rivers is a Night's Queen figure, and she has this other baby, and we're waiting to see, honestly, what's going to come from all that. But this definitely all fits in with Aemond being this Night King character. And so at the very end of it, the last thing we'll end with this is the idea that the Great Other is in the Weirwood Net, waiting to be reborn as the new Night's King, or waiting to steal someone's body like Euron or Jon's body. Where does Aemond go when he dies after his fight with Daemon? He's stuck in the lake. Where do Night Kings go? They go into the Weirwood Net. Remember, the symbolism of the others has a lot to do with the frozen lake. It comes from Dante, and it comes from Paradise Lost, where Satan is down there in the ninth circle of hell in a frozen lake. And so the sound of the other speaking is like the cracking of the ice on a winter lake. It's like the cracking of the lake that traps Lucifer in hell.
Well, I think it's also very important to notice that icy lake that Lucifer is trapped in there is because he's crying the tears that are freezing. So you have the frozen
Even
bloody
have the
tears
frozen tears
again.
right. And so when the other's voice cracks and breaks, that is like the cracking of the ice. And I don't have any PayPals, Kimberly. I looked. I don't see any PayPal questions. And so, did somebody say they had one? I didn't see one. And so, the idea that Aemond goes into the blue lake at the end, it's not a frozen lake, but it gives you the same idea. Like he's down there in the lake, and Aemond's skeleton is strapped to the dragon, so it's still down there in the lake. So it's like, where's Night's King?
Well, and to give more layers to this,
that's what you're here for.
Yeah, layer cake. One of the big ways that they symbolize the werewood net as like a place in the afterlife, and to give it a more concrete place in the real world, is the green seer thing, which ends up converting to basically all bodies of water, whether it's like a river that's representing the river of time, whether it's the trident, which is the weapon of a sea god. You use these bodies of water for it, and an icy winter lake is the other's version of that. But we see it in the word roots of a lot of these characters. So when you look at word roots for example, someone who symbolically goes into the werewood net, Rhaenys and Meraxes, Mer is Latin for sea. Like it's the derivation that we use for marine. Okay. So anytime you see MER or MAR in a character,
right,
it's
like mermaid or wherever. Yeah.
Merman.
So
anytime you see, whether it's a prefix or a suffix or whatever, you're going to see green sea vibes. You're going to see green seer vibes going into the werewood net from that character, and it's everywhere. Waymar, like it. It's really just like a fourth of the characters have one of those, and then you add up the characters that have Lys or Lys in it, and they're being typecast.
So, Kimberly, if you want to just repeat your question in the chat, I can't find the thing that you sent.
And I'm easily distracted and didn't see.
And so, basically, the point is that Night King is in the werewood net. He is down there at the bottom of the lake, and at some point, he's waiting to come out. So, I just love that last little bit of that fight.
There's a hole in the bottom of the sea.
What's that from?
I just remember Stewie singing a song like that to a bunch of seniors in Family Guy back when we used to watch that.
I only watched a little bit of Family Guy.
Yeah, me too. But that was memorable for me.
Cool. Well, like I said, final call for questions. Kim, do you have that question that you had for me? Or
Adam Marbrand is another big one. Big last hero figure. He has Mar in the name.
Please elaborate on Rhaenys in Hellwood and Dorne and the underground tunnels connection.
Underground tunnels?
In the Winds of Winter? I don't know what you mean.
I think you're talking about, do you remember in the sample chapters with Arianne where she was in the Child of the Forest tunnels?
What's that got to do with Rhaenys? And
I think they're talking about the idea, you've talked about it before, I think, where there's an idea that maybe there's like an underground cave werewood network throughout Westeros. Maybe. I could be off.
I just think the
struggling with this.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Aemond is likely. Okay, L Driver from Kill Bill. Klaus von. Oh, he tried to kill Hitler. Yeah. Well, he had the eye patch, didn't he? They both have eye patches.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, and Kill Bill. What's her name? She gets buried in a coffin. That's the symbolic death, and then she's able to come back and defeat the person who only sacrificed an eye for their power.
So you're saying other people have read Odin mythology other than George Martin?
Yeah,
I see.
yeah. I from what I understand, it's a major fetish. A lot of people are into Odin.
It freaks me out. I don't want any eye injury stuff.
Well,
That was the hardest part of Terminator for me.
Not every Odin character has to be missing an eye. Gandalf is a huge Odin figure, and all he had to do was put on the floppy, wide-brimmed hat.
That's so much easier, really.
Well, he did die.
And he rides a gray horse as well.
Yeah, he did die, though.
True.
That was the whole thing.
Mm. Oh, man. Season 2 of that show looks so bad.
Of Rings of Power?
Oh, God.
I was very disappointed by it and how many changes they made.
It doesn't look like it's going to get better.
But it was funny to me that they made Gandalf a meteor.
Yeah. I did enjoy that.
And aside from that, I have a big Lord of the Rings script waiting for when that trailer drops. I don't care if I don't like the show. There's going to be, Lord of the Rings fans. Watch my Lord of the Rings video. But, yeah, God, that was a disappointment. They did Gandalf dirty.
Oh, there's Cannibal the Dragon is in our chat.
Cannibal the Dragon?
It's Cannibal the Dragon.
All right,
David, I don't give out how to cook or eat hatchlings.
Cannibal the Dragon, can you settle something for us? Who is your rider?
It's meant to be Corliss, right? I do work with that nice guy, the Hound, on his KFC Dragon Fire Chicken. That's dope. Cool, guys. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. And it's about 11 o'clock here, so it's been about 2 hours. I will see you with Nettles and Tim tomorrow after the show for the normal after show. And I just dropped a How to Claim Your Dragon video. If you haven't seen that, came out a day ago. And I heard this is going to be a really great episode this week. Lots of Dragon Seed stuff coming. So,
well, they've done a couple of builder episodes in a row, so now it's time to stop planting and start harvesting here. But I'm glad to be here on Between Two Birds, and please, like and subscribe. Obviously, you're already all like and subscribe to David Lightbringer. Please also like and subscribe to me. I'm trying to launch my fledgling career here as well, and my Patreon. I just put up an Arthur and a Song of Ice and Fire video. I'm proud is the wrong word, but I think it's good stuff.
You've given birth. You can be proud.
I gave birth. Well, but it's very goofy and informal, and but yeah. Anyway, soon to be Iron Islands video. Psyched about that.
Fun.
I feel weird, promoting that in front of
you.
you.
No, you can talk about the Iron Islands. It's okay.
I don't own them. Worth of
I don't
Iron
own the Iron Islands.
You might at this point. Eminent domain.
Eminent
Squatters' rights. I don't know.
Well, guys, I did was talking to Maynard about would it be cool to take all of my Ironborn videos and combine them into one upload? It'd be like a 9-hour.
Forge one giant sword.
Just to be ostentatious. Yeah. But there you go. All right, guys. I will see you tomorrow night. Thank you, Sean, for...
And I'll be around tomorrow night, too. I'll be very sassy in the chat.
Very sassy, Sean, in the chat, as usual. Yeah. And, we'll see you then. And you've been a beautiful, beautiful audience, so thank you. Cheers.